Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. The Pentagon's decision to cancel a planned rotation of 4,000 U.S. troops to Poland has triggered concern in Warsaw and sharp criticism on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers from both parties questioning how the move was handled and whether allies were properly informed. Polish and American officials are now holding a series of high-level consultations amid broader questions about the future of the U.S. military presence on NATO's eastern flank. So what exactly has happened here, and what should Poland expect next? Joining us now to talk about it all is Jacek Raubo, Director of Defence24 Analysis Unit. Good to have you back with us. Welcome.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation.
So I want to call on your military expertise here, Jacek. I mean, there's a lot that I want to ask you, but just generally, how you've seen all this transform over these last days. Is this really about logistics? Is there any sense to it? Explain the big picture here to us briefly.
Truly, there are two different layers. They are maybe separate from our view, but they are very large synergy. One of them is a long-term change of U.S. posture toward Europe, and it's very obvious that U.S. is right now switching some of their strategic goals from European area of responsibility to Indo-Pacific. It is a very visible strategic shift from Obama even. That's why they need to reform their positions when we think about the numbers and also the quality and quantity balance in the context of the different regions. That's the strategic layer. Now, on the other hand, of course, we need to see this operational layer. And therefore, we need to see divisions between the both sides, Europe and US, in the context of Gulf situation and Strait of Hormuz, and also other things dedicated to American policy around the world and European unbalanced policy toward this administration. And I think we have a synergy of both layers, operational and the strategic layers. And from the other hand, when we think about the eastern flank and also our own situation here, we need to stay in balance. Why? Mostly because U.S., of course, is modified on their policy toward Europe. But on the other hand, they are here. We see practical actions from, for instance, Fifth Corps toward some kind of exercises. For instance, Sabre Strike 26 is held, and we saw some of new technologies inside this kind of exercises. So we need to stay in balance, and we need to maybe, I don't know, control some of our emotions around that, because as I mentioned, we need to understand in this strategic shift from American Pentagon policy. But on the other hand, they will be here. I'm pretty sure that U.S. invests a large amount of money in various locations here in Poland, but also in the regional context. And that's why they will change, of course, the levels, but they will stay here.
Mm-hmm. And also, as you said, there are certain signals, tangible signals, and in fact, you mentioned as well, to remember also on Monday, so today, we'll have, there's a signing ceremony, I believe it's in Poland, Dęblin, between the Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, I think the Defense Minister, also about a facility, Honeywell facility. Now, I think that matters because they produce, I think, one of the only ones outside of the United States that actually service those engines for the M1 Abrams tanks. So that, I think, is a tangible signal. But, I mean, also to Poland, it's seen as a model ally. It's been touted as something that others should follow. Nevertheless, people will be worried. What do you make of those high-level talks? I mean, there's going to be a lot of transit over the next couple of days. You have also NATO SACEUR coming to Poland on Tuesday. You have certain high-level people from Poland going to the United States. Will there be reassurances? Will there be something out of this? What's going to happen behind closed doors?
I suppose something which is behind or will stay behind, but of course this kind of high-level talks are able to use as a strategic communication tool to strengthen this partnership, and also to secure the level of emotions which can affect our Polish debate about our partnership in the context of bilateral relation, but also in the context of NATO. Therefore, I think we will have a large number of, for instance, strong statements. You mentioned this technological cooperation, but on the other hand, we need to watch carefully what is going on inside this infrastructure place here in Poland. I think we are still not able to find the level of American presence here on our soil because we mostly watching the numbers of troops rotating here. But I think when we understand the maneuverability of U.S. armed forces, I'm not talking only about U.S. Army, I'm talking about the whole armed forces, all branches. We need to watch what is going on with the new construction of their presence here in the context of infrastructure. Look on the Redzikowo. Redzikowo as a naval support facility is very important, but we are not talking about the existence of this kind of a compound. But I think it's play a very critical role in American planning, not even in the context of missile defense. On the other hand, we have the so-called Army Proposition Stock second compound in Police. Why this matters? Mostly because this is the place where the whole brigade can receive full equipment and be able to work alongside partners in the context of the whole flank. We have the synergy of airfield and also this compound where we can get, but also the NATO partners and the American partners can get equipment for the mechanized unit with main battle tanks, MBTs, with APCs, with also some medical support for them. So this is the new construction. If we will have a potential crisis here, they can send reinforcements very fast and very effectively. On the other hand, I think we need to emphasize the role of the 5th Corps forward presence here in Poznan, where I'm connecting with you. Why it's so important? Because we are watching a new generation of American warfighters. I'm talking about officers, but also non-commissioned officers and other personnel who learned what is going on the Eastern Flank. I need to mention in this context, for instance, the new achievements when we think about U.S. Army preparedness toward drone warfare. They are testing a new technologies here in Poland, but also in the context of the whole Eastern Flank. They are training these maneuvers from Germany to Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. They are operating here. So we will see a new generation of warfighters who are able to support us in the time of crisis. So we need to strengthen this partnership, and mostly we need to fight right now with the strategic communication technology to not be able to defend this narratives inside info and cognitive domain.
Mm-hmm. But also, if I just want to ask you about narrative as well, and we've had this very, very important meeting back in September between President Trump and President Nawrocki, and I think that was also touted as an achievement where I think Trump said very much that, I'm quoting here, we've never even thought in terms of removing soldiers from Poland. We would never do that in terms of actually going on about the presence of Polish troops. Now we have this, but as you've said and pointed out, there's certain logistical, let's say, many examples where they actually will stay. But what kind of message does this send in your mind? How would this strategically be analyzed? It's important as well by Russia. We've had also high-level politicians in the United States and Congress saying this does send a bad message to our allies. So how does Russia interpret all this, you think?
You point three different fields with your question. One question. The first one is very easy. Congress is a battlefield, and we, from our perspective, not only from Polish perspective, but from a European perspective, need to understand it better and better. That's why it's important to have this kind of a lobbies tools toward the different Congress members from both chambers. On the other hand, when we think about the Russian case here on the Eastern Flank, I think the answer is Article 3 from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization document, which is the crucial treaty. Article 3 is defining that every NATO member need to invest and need to enlarge their own capabilities to defend their own soil, and also to be a vital partner in the context of the allied operation. Therefore, I think this message needs to be sent mostly from our side, from European side, and it will be highly compared to the new NATO policy, which is right now focusing on strengthening the European pillar. So Russia will be a problem, will be a critical challenge for the whole NATO in the future. But of course, US need to redefine their approach when we think about operation below the threshold for deterrence issues. They will stay here with some capabilities, but I think the game is right now playing with mostly European partners. That's why they need to strengthen the partnership here in the context of Nordic flank, Eastern flank, and Southern flank, but also in the partnership with France, Germany, and also Italy. The third question about the situation with some statements. Of course, White House and American administration is trying to use this military presence as a tool in the wider context of their negotiations with European partners. And they will do it, I think, further. Unfortunately for us, it's a very delicate issue because we are on the front line. But also, as I mentioned before, we need to accept and we need to have a countermeasures to balance this emotions, as I mentioned before. But on the other hand, to be a very pragmatic partner with US and other European allies. We will not be able to escape from the Article 3 definition of our own capabilities. And I think the Cold War standards, where US stand here with divisions, corps to secure the whole Western Europe is the Cold War standard. Right now, US is not able to provide this kind of a level of forces in the context of European defense. We need to remember that.
Okay. So I just want to wrap up and ask you then, Jacek Raubo, in terms of how you would maybe advise or some words of assurance and what you kind of expect to see over the next few days and weeks in this topic.
I suppose we need to use very effective tools we created from the beginnings of transformation. The first one is, of course, direct connection between presidents. They have a very strong relation. We know very well that, and you also quote this kind of a statement from Donald Trump. But on the other hand, there is a visible statement from the Polish president. On the other hand, we need to use other tools when we think about a governmental level. We know very well that Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense is well connected with Secretary Hexet. On the other hand, charts are also connecting each other, and the high commanding officers are able to talk also as we talk behind the doors. And on the other hand, I think here there is a biggest gap. We need to strengthen our partnership with MPs from both chambers of U.S. Congress. I think we are losing ground in this context because we don't understand, I think, still this enormous role of U.S. Congress in creation of the practical U.S. policy, not only when we think about their internal policy, but also when we think about their foreign policy, and also the Department of War, former Defense Department policies. So I think this is the main challenge we need to struggle with. And if I will be able to advise, I think our MPs, our politicians need to strengthen the partnership, bilateral partnership with their counterparts from both chambers of U.S. Congress in the context, of course, of this new elections in the U.S. It might be a very interesting tool to emphasize our pressure on, maybe not the pressure is the wrong word in the context of the cooperation. I think our partnership tools with U.S. politicians.
All right. So, as you said, there are still lots of work ahead. But thanks for all those insights. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us here. Jacek Raubo, the Director, Defence24 Analysis Unit. Thank you. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.